So I think most of you are aware that today we have Earth Day. So basically we're doing a no electricity or no computers day, and some of our lessons will be outside, but that depends on the teachers as well. But today we have a special guest here, Mr. Harrison, and he's the Executive Vice President of the Environmental Defense Fund, and he's going to be talking to us about energy saving.
Thank you.
Very much, everyone. Can everyone hear me at the back? Can you wave at the back if you can hear? Someone for that? Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you. Okay, well, who thinks that energy saving is boring? Go, come on, be honest. Like, I'll help you. I'll tell you what I think.
Boring, this is what I like it.
Okay, we see some more hands going up. Good, good. Well, thanks for being honest. Thanks for being candid. And I'm not surprised, right? Not doing anything is boring, right? When we talk about energy saving, we're talking about not leaving the light switched on. We're talking about not leaving your laptop open. We're talking about not buying clothes and then throwing them away a few months later because you want some other clothes. We're talking about not taking a plane flight to another city because you want to visit that city for the weekend. Yeah? In a few years, some of you will have cars. It'll be about not driving around in your car with your friends playing the music just because you feel like it. So not doing things it's inconvenient, it's hard, right? You have to make difficult choices. You have to decide very often not to do things that you want to do. But it is important. And I was part of a group a few years ago assembled by the United Nations to talk about exactly that problem. How do you communicate issues of environmental protection? How do you communicate about climate change in a way that people find interesting? So today, hopefully, I can try to get you interested in the subject. Yeah? And one of the learnings from that United Nations project was that, yes, it's really difficult to get people interested in climate change. It's invisible for a start. It's incredibly slow, right? You know, when people tell you, oh, you know, we're going to lose the ice sheets in the Arctic, it's going to be like in 2100, right? I mean, who cares about 2100, right? Certainly, I'll be dead by then, you know. It's not meaningful to most people. And in fact, all we can do is we can rely on scientists to tell us that it's the truth and that it's happening, right? And even, you know, today we're finally starting to actually see the signs of what was predicted. We're seeing more droughts, we're seeing more wildfires, right? Wildfires, they're exciting. But even when we have them, scientists can't tell you that's due to climate change. They can say it was more likely that this wildfire occurred because of climate change, but they can't say that was due to climate change. You know? And so it's a very, very difficult subject for people to get interested in. And I think it's good to start by recognizing that. But it doesn't mean that it's not important. So protecting the environment and tackling climate change is very much about changing the way we use energy. And there's many other reasons why energy is exciting. So let's talk about the war in Ukraine. Yeah? That's not boring, right? You know, people blowing each other up is very sad, it's very tragic, but it's certainly not boring. And there is a big connection between energy and the war in Ukraine, because one of the reasons that Vladimir Putin thought that he could invade Ukraine and get away with it is because Europe as a whole was so addicted to Russian oil and Russian gas. And he thought that Europe would just not dare to resist, would not dare to support the Ukrainian people, or he would cut off their gas supplies. Now that didn't happen, thankfully. But it's just important to realize the link between energy and the big politics of the world and the tragedies that can happen, but also the amazing things that can happen too. And the way it works in Russia is when we spend money on oil or gas that is coming from Russia, much of that goes to Putin's regime, and they use it for buying ammunition, building missiles, building warplanes, building tanks. And so if we can cut off that flow of money to Russia, we can help to end the war sooner, right? And that applies not just to our governments, but also to all of us as individuals. You know, when you close a window to keep your bedroom warmer, you are doing a tiny thing to help the people of Ukraine. Don't get me wrong, I'm not racist against Russian people, you know, the Russian population, I got no problem with them. But, you know, we all have to recognize that the Russian regime has started a war against the people of Ukraine. And it would be better for them and for everyone if that ended sooner. So, nothing against Russia, but just making clear the link between how you use energy and the fate of those people in Ukraine. And just to put some scale on it, right? So Europe is trying to use less Russian energy, but it's very difficult to do. So the governments have announced sanctions on Russia, but still the money keeps flowing through because of the things we all do in our day-to-day lives. Since the invasion started, we, as Europeans, have sent 3 billion euros to Russia to buy their coal. 3 billion euros is a big number. I'll try and put that in context. It's 1,000 Bugattis, for those who like cars. 1,000 Bugattis worth of money going to Russian coal. I'm working on, I can see people are starting to question my price of a Bugatti. I'm working on 3 million for a Bugatti. Maybe I'm wrong on that. 3 billion actually in big numbers. When you're talking politics, when you're talking global power, it's a small number. But that's not all. We're sending 60 billion, or we have sent 60 billion to the Russian regime since the start of the war for their gas. And we sent 88 billion for their oil. So you can see, even if we care about ending the war as soon as possible, because we're all using a lot of energy, the war is continuing. And we can help end the war sooner by avoiding wasting that energy. Some of it we have to use, but not, some of it we are wasting. So, it's important that all of you know how you can save energy. Another reason you should care about energy is it is a huge part of the future. If you care about making money, if you care about business, if you care about technology, if you care about innovation, if you care about all of those things, I think they're exciting. I certainly think, making money is not boring. Then you should be interested in energy. Who knows what happened to SpaceX today, overnight?
The rocket blew up.
The rocket blew up. Exactly, yeah. Elon Musk has built this empire, based on pushing the frontiers of technology and innovation. He's launching rockets into space. He's building electric cars that nobody thought could be built. He's doing all sorts of innovations around computing and technology. All of that is exciting. All of that is the future. And a large amount of that is based around energy. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the opportunities that can come from that future, the opportunities that are out there for you in a few years' time, when you become adults and you start looking for work. Because it's an exciting future. But what do I know about it? I was introduced by my title, which is good and correct, and thank you. But it doesn't really say what I know, who I am. I started my career as a marine biologist. And this is back almost prehistoric times in the 1990s. And I studied marine biology in the UK. I got to the end of my university course and I found there were no jobs. But I still wanted to carry on doing what I wanted to do, which was to basically spend my time swimming around with sharks and dolphins. That was, at the time, that was my ideal job. And so I bought a plane ticket, I went to Egypt, and I spent 3 years taking people on scuba diving trips around Egypt to see sharks and dolphins. And beyond Egypt, we used to sail down into Sudan, into Eritrea, into Yemen, into Djibouti, Somalia. These are places where today, if you try and do that today, you'll get captured by pirates and you'll get ransomed. We did actually get captured and ransomed. That's another story. But just even the day-to-day, we used to have people who would book our boat, they'd come on board, we'd take groups of 10 people, they'd say, we want to see sharks every day, and we want you to feed those sharks. We used to go down, this was like a fairly typical day for me, is I would go underwater with a bag full of fish heads, and I would feed sharks so that people could get great photographs of them. I mean, that's a great job, that's an amazing job. And I did that for every day, without holidays, without weekends. I did that every day for 3 years. It was an amazing, amazing lifestyle. And at the end of each day, then I'd finally get a break. Once everything had been tidied away, cleared away, everyone had their dinner, everyone would go to their bunks because you're living on a boat, and I'd go to my bunk and I'd read. And one day I was reading about climate change. And I learned that coral reefs, as I knew them, would be extinct, would disappear. 80% of coral reefs would disappear by 2040. And that's true, that fact remains true. We are on track because we are using energy unsustainably. We are on track to eliminate 80% of coral reefs by 2040. And that fact, that kind of woke me up. And I thought, well, it's great, I'm having a great time, but I'm not really making the world a better place. And because I felt fairly empowered, right? I mean, at that stage, I'd left school, I'd said, I want to spend my time swimming with sharks and get paid for it. And it had happened, so I thought, okay, well, if you want to make something happen, then, we have the power to do that, right? I mean, I think a lot of people feel that they don't have the power to change the world, but you do have the power. If you put your mind to it, you can change the world. So I returned to London, and I spent the last 20 years working to protect the environment and to prevent climate change. And a large part of that, I worked at an organisation called the European Climate Foundation. Basically what the European Climate Foundation does is it collects money from billionaires. So I'd spend a lot of time in California and Silicon Valley talking to billionaires, discussing this difficult problem and how we were going to fix it. And using their money, I ran a campaign of around 120 people, campaigning for electric cars. Or campaigning for cleaner cars, actually, just normal cars to be less polluting. I'll give you a little example of that. One of our team, who was a researcher, had a suspicion that car companies were cheating on the tests, because cars go in every year to get tested, to check that they have good enough brakes and airbags, but also that they're not polluting everybody on the street. And one of our researchers suspected that Volkswagen and some other car companies were cheating the tests, that the cars knew when they were on the test track, and the test track is a bit like a running machine, it's stationary, it's in a laboratory, and they suspected that the cars somehow had an algorithm that knew when they were on that running machine, and they were altering the way the engine worked to reduce their pollution. And so what did? They took a whole stack of cars and they took them out in the real world with a measuring device strapped to the back, and lo and behold, it showed that actually Volkswagen was cheating. Several other car companies as well. But it was Volkswagen that got taken before the courts. And when the US government learned about this, the US government came down heavy on Volkswagen. In the few days that followed, right, 25 billion, there's some big numbers, you can compute that in Bugattis if you like. Yeah? 25 billion of value was destroyed from that company, Volkswagen, the biggest car company in the world at the time, right? Investors lost massive amounts of money. The government of Qatar lost 7 billion, just that one investor, right? It was a disaster for the company, yeah? Volkswagen has faced fines since then of $33 billion on top of that, right? These are big numbers, these are exciting things, these are certainly not boring, I think. The CEO of Volkswagen had to resign. He faced criminal charges. Certainly wasn't boring for him. Certainly wasn't boring for 10 or so Volkswagen executives who also faced criminal charges. So that was our campaign. That was a small part of our campaign, and it is one of the reasons why you see so many electric cars on the roads today. And the reason I tell you that story is because I want to empower you. I want you to understand that if you set your goals, if you do want to achieve something, you can achieve something, you can achieve something massive, you can achieve something massive that changes the world, right? It can be swimming with sharks, it can be whatever you want to do, but it can also be changing the world for the better. I no longer work at that organisation. I now work at an organisation called the Environmental Defence Fund, where I don't just work on climate change. I work on issues. I work on climate change, but I also work on issues like protecting rainforests, protecting the oceans, protecting people from air pollution that causes asthma, these kind of things. Very diverse range of things to do with protecting the planet. I've got a team that I help oversee in the United States of about 200 people. I've got a team in China of about 60 people. Got a team in India of about 20 and about 20 in Europe. Yeah, it's a big organization. It's exciting to work with a group of smart, motivated people who are all on a mission. And so that's another thing you might want to think about a few years from now if you're looking for a job, is there is an exciting job to be had, just being paid to spend your time thinking about how to make the world a better place. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my vision. So that's who I am. Yeah, I've told you, why I think you should care about energy. I've told you my credentials for talking about that, who I am, why I know about this stuff. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my vision. And my vision is that we move to a world where nearly all of our energy comes directly from the sun, through solar or from wind, basically renewable energy, and everything is powered by renewable energy. And because renewable energy can be converted into electricity, and everything, nearly everything, can be electrified, right? And it's essentially because, you look around you in the world and it all looks pretty sophisticated, it all looks pretty exciting. It's all powered by burning stuff. Well, that's not particularly clever, right? It is, what we were doing when humans lived in caves. We were burning stuff. Yeah, throughout the Dark Ages, we burnt stuff. Today, basically, we burn stuff. We burn stuff more sophisticatedly, yeah, and to turn it into energy and to turn it into plastics and etc. and metal and blah blah blah. But it's all based on burning stuff. It's incredibly wasteful, and it is also very, very polluting. Let me give you an idea of how primitive it is. When you put gasoline in a car and you burn it to create movement, you lose 60 to 70% of that just in the engine, just heating the engine up. All of that friction, that energy is just wasted. And in fact, in that whole system, only about 10 to 15% of the energy actually gets as far as the wheels. Yeah. So going back to our Bugatti, the Bugatti is an amazing piece of engineering, but it still only manages to get 10% of the energy out of the gasoline and into moving fast. Yeah. By contrast, an electric car gets 40% of the electricity from the wheel to the wheels. And if you're doing an electric car and you're powering it directly from the sun, it's even higher, it's over 50%. So this whole idea of electrifying stuff is incredibly powerful. It is electrifying stuff that will get us to the moon. It will get us to other galaxies, yeah? We won't be going there on a rocket powered by a diesel engine. So the whole idea about changing the energy system, protecting the environment, is very closely interwoven with innovation and with technology. And I hope, if you're like me, you find that exciting. It certainly is going to be a very large part of your future. And there's a lot of money to be earned in that world. The European Union has just agreed a massive funding facility of 840 billion euros. It's called Next Generation EU. The reason it's called Next Generation EU, I think, I never talked to them, the people who gave it that name, but it's about the next generation, it's about you, yeah? That money is there for you to rebuild society, yeah? It is there to pay you to do jobs that will help make the world a better place. Because about 40% of that money is actually earmarked for preserving the planet. And America has done something similar. Joe Biden has just announced 1 trillion. Now we're going into the next level. We're not talking Bugattis, we're not talking billions, we're talking trillions, because we're in America. And so the race is on now between Europe and the United States to be the first in developing these technologies. And I should not forget to mention China, because that's the other reason that we're doing it. Certainly the motivation of the Americans is they don't want China to get too far ahead on the electric car or on hydrogen or on the technologies of the future, because the Americans want to win the race. So there is now a global race happening to be at the front, cutting edge of technology innovation. And I think that's pretty exciting. There's a lot of jobs there for you, and bringing it closer to home, there's a lot of jobs here in Belgium. A lot of people are working on something called a North Sea Energy Hub. The whole idea is the wind never stops blowing up there. You can build thousands of wind turbines out at sea, and they can all bring that energy to a massive island. They're constructing a huge island. Yeah? And from there, they're going to bring it in giant cables to the shore. And that electricity they can't use, they can use it to split the atoms of water, the molecules of water, into hydrogen and oxygen. And those hydrogen and oxygen are valuable chemicals that can be used in all sorts of ways in industry. So there's going to be literally hundreds of thousands of jobs right here in the future, building that new energy future. So, I see that I'm running out of time. Can we take 1 or 2 questions? Yeah? So I'll stop there. I hope I persuaded you that saving energy doesn't necessarily need to be as boring as you might think at first. Hopefully I've persuaded you that it's certainly important. If you think about the other uses of energy, it's certainly important, because it's certainly important for preventing war. And I hope I've demonstrated to you that it's going to be a big part of the future and a big part of your future. So do we have any questions? Yes, please.
For teenagers and people of kind of our age group, what would be a very easy way for us to contribute to that effort of helping the environment and climate change?
So I'd say the biggest way is to focus on that in your career. They are literally, right now, those industries are struggling to find enough talent. So the Wind Energy Association has started recruiting people straight from school. And I'm not saying skip university, right? This isn't an excuse not to focus on your grades, right? You still need good grades. But they're hiring people out of school because they're so desperate to get engineers to build new wind farms, yeah? That's one way. And then there's a ton of day-to-day things you can do, you know? If you're thinking about mobility, you know, rather than asking your parents to drive you somewhere, you know, take the bus, take the tram. Brussels is a city that has a pretty decent public transport system. If you think about electricity all the time, turning the lights off, shutting down your laptop when you're not using it, yeah. Think about heat. Yeah, don't leave your bedroom windows open and get the whole house freezing. Close them when you don't need them. Yeah. These are some of the main things. Recycling is also important, and not consuming clothes like they're going out of fashion, because they do go out of fashion. But still, hang on to them as long as you can. Another question here.
Will we be dead when all the when climate change is to its finest and when it becomes horrible, extreme,
Okay.
yeah. Will we be dead or no?
I very much hope that none of you will be dead. I will definitely, yeah. I'm over 50 now, right? I'll probably see the first kind of worsenings of climate change. It is projected to get really kind of horrible about, if we do nothing, it's going to get horrible about 30 years from now. That's when we're going to start seeing migration happen because some places get too hot, yeah? Or, fisheries collapse because the coral reefs aren't there anymore. But I don't want to talk too much about the doom and gloom. That's why I made this talk about the opportunities, because there is the opportunity to stop that happening. There is the opportunity to, on a day-to-day basis, start now by saving energy, and in your career, you can build a career on saving the planet. One more question, I think, and then I'll have to stop.
Even if we use renewable sources for electric cars, wouldn't we need lithium-ion batteries, and which would need 5 times more energy to mine than coal?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's a really big topic at the moment. Yeah, there is huge amount of mining needed to move to this this new economy. What we're doing is we're taking the current economy, which is basically built out of steel and concrete, and it is constantly fed with coal and gas and oil. Right? We're going from those kind of minerals to a different set of minerals. The future economy will be built out of steel for sure, but there will also be huge amounts of copper used to transmit all of that electricity. There will be lithium, manganese, zinc, etc., etc. Yeah, all of that needs to be mined out of the earth, and it's massive. But the good thing about this is that you can recycle all of that at the end of its life. So you only have to pull it out of the earth once, and then it can go into a loop where at the end of the life of a car, it's pulled to pieces, you take out the lithium, you take out the manganese, you take out the nickel, and you use it again. Yeah? So the mining only has to happen once. Whereas when we're talking about oil or gas or coal, the mining has to happen constantly. And it's difficult to really get a sense of the size of this. But I saw a graph the other day that illustrated it really well. And it showed how much copper would need to be mined. And it was a little line like this. And it was essentially how much copper are we mining today, and zinc and nickel and lithium and all of those minerals you're talking about. It's a tiny line, and it said how much will we need to mine by 2040. 20 years from now, how much more will we need? And it was a chunk like this. And then it said how much are we mining today if you add up all of the coal and the oil and the gas. And the line started here, and it went down off the bottom of the page, and it carried out on 5 pages later. And it was a way of illustrating the huge demands that we actually take for granted every day. We don't even think about it. There's a massive amount of extraction of oil, gas, and coal that we're doing today, hugely disruptive. And if we move to this new energy future that I'm talking about, it will be disruptive. Yeah, there will be some extraction, but it will be relatively tiny. So I think we have to stop there. I hope you found it interesting. I've certainly enjoyed talking to you, and I just urge you to think about these things as you go about the day on this Earth Day.